Hello and welcome to another no, wrong show. For the love of sports. My name is Michael Rasile. I got my man Jackson Fitzgerald here with me today. This is the show where I get to talk about sports, I get to talk about business, and I get to talk about everything in between. Jackson, how you doing today, buddy?
Good, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. Very excited to learn a little bit more about Hedge. Jackson is the CEO and co-founder of Hedge. So think Acorn, but for fantasy sports, which is really cool, I think. And so I think I'm very excited to jump into that. A little bit about your background. Obviously, you spent some time at Penn State, which I think is pretty cool. They're very well known for their Sports Business Association and conference and everything they got rocking over there. Shout out our good friend Alex Scheinman. But first question I have for everybody, Jackson, on the what show am I even doing? I don't even know anymore, man. Sorry.
Oh, good, man.
First question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Oh, man, why do I love sports? So part of it's coming from being raised as around sports, not necessarily professional sports, but I played sports all year round myself. So I could always appreciate watching NBA games, NFL games growing up. Being from Pittsburgh, it's a sports town, as you probably know, successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, depending on the team and year. But really, I just love to sort of watch. I appreciate the games, I'll think, a lot more now as I'm getting older. Maybe as I'm playing pickup basketball and I can see my prime slowly declining. No, but I really just love I love the enthusiasm around it for anybody that barely knows sports and people that are playing themselves. So being raised around it, it's easy to love.
It's an easy conversation starter too. That never hurt, right? I mean, I hate Sidney Crosby, so we can have that conversation all day. He's one of the greatest ever. But damn, do I hate Sidney Crosby? He's amazing, but I can't stand the guy.
Yeah, and I hate Tom Brady. So, but I respect him. So it's similar.
Yep. Yeah, it's that from Anchorman. I hate you, but I respect you. That whole thing. So that's always
exactly
fun. But man, no, I think it is really cool, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more about Hedge and kind of what you guys are doing and how you did it. So I guess we'll start there. Like, usually coming out of college, people look for jobs, they look for opportunities, internships. Doesn't really look like you had any of those along the way. I guess when was the idea for Hedge, I guess, born, if that's how companies work? And when did you really decide, like, instead of maybe doing this as a side hustle, making this your full-time, go-to?
Sure. Yeah. So I finished up at Penn State in 2019. And the idea really came from trying to solve problems that I and my inner circle of friends had. So it wasn't really just one of those like, oh, this should be this for that, even though it's, like you said, Acorn for Fantasy Sports is a great way to understand it. It's actually funny, when in 2019, I think it was when UVA won the NCAA championship, a friend of mine who knows nothing about sports was the only guy who had Auburn in the championship. And if you remember, they made it to the Final Four. And it came pretty simply. He came to me. I was a stat major. And he said, hey, there's probably got to be a way for me to lock in some money here. What do I do? And I was like, oh, you would just like do this, this, or this. There are different scenarios that you could bet and hedge as it'll come, as the name comes around. And really with that, I realized there are more problems in the gaming industry that, as it was emerging, weren't really being solved. You see a lot of companies fighting for market share and maybe innovating here and there, but there's such a wide gap. It's such a big market that little innovations like what we're doing really seem to solve a ton of problems that weren't being addressed. So coming out of Penn State, I was thinking of doing law school. I still hope to do law school at some point. The advice I got was law school's not going anywhere. And I had a couple of job offers lined up as well. But after meeting with some people who were sort of more expert in the space, in the VC startup space, and meeting some potential co-founders who I already knew, and I guess convinced them that the problems we were solving were worth solving, it was an easier jump than I guess I thought it was going to be. So summer 2019 was when we made the jump. Right after, a couple of the guys were in similar spaces, they had jobs, but decided it was the time to give it a shot. So
hell yeah, man! And in 2020, the whole world shut down. So
yeah,
great timing.
Great timing.
Great
Exactly.
timing, right? But no, I think it's awesome. And hey, man, you have to have, no matter what you do as a startup founder, as a business owner, you have to be a good salesman, right? Like, you have to convince people either to give you money to use your product or to come on board and become part of the team. So I think that part is pretty cool. And so, yeah, you kind of said it. I said it a little bit too. It's the Acorn for Fantasy Sports, which doesn't, like, it makes sense after you explain it, but when you first say it, it's like, wait, what do you mean? How does that work? Do you like, so how you said you were trying to solve these problems? I guess, what was the problem that you then came up with the solution for?
Sure. Yeah. So the problem that we saw with specifically the spare change roundup function was pretty much twofold. One, when you look at platforms that do the auto investment, roundup investment, They don't offer great returns often. I mean, that's maybe just a lack of power in the stock market, unless you throw the spare change at GameStop, but that's a different conversation.
That's a different
Yeah. We saw that people really like the functionality. They were like, I'm willing to sacrifice my spare change. This is one of the only platforms that I can do it, but it's actually not that exciting. So we thought that maybe tapping into the spare change potential of the excitement of sports, combining the two, really solve the problem of, I want to use my spare change, but I want to use it for something fun, something exciting. The other one is you can't really pick where the spare change investments go. It's an auto investment application, and there's no shame in that. I think they're really, as an auto investment, they're saying, just give us your spare change. We'll take care of the rest and let it grow. But we were like, well, people sometimes maybe want to decide where they want it to go. Maybe they want it to go on the game tonight. Maybe they want to put it on. I'm a Steelers fan. The Steelers to win the Super Bowl, which then I guess it goes down the toilet. But it adds an excitement to it. So gamifying spare change is sort of more of the mission in what we're trying to do. So
yeah, and I think it's really interesting, right? Like, it's one of those, just you swipe on your credit card and you got your Chipotle burrito for $8.40, so you got 60 cents left over. Just round up, and then it goes through Hedge, correct? So I guess how, like, why though? Like, I mean, I have DraftKings, I have FanDuel. Like, I don't know, what's that 60 cents going to do for me? Why do I even care about it?
Sure. No, that's a great point. That actually leads into the other problem that we're solving. A lot of people getting into the industry, whether they're 18 years old, just becoming of legal age, whether they move to a legal state, or maybe they're a young adult who's just going to give it a shot, finally jump that gap. We figured out that really starting off small with just your spare change is a great way to enter the market, learn some of the lingo that's behind, like if you're betting, what's the spread, what's the money line, all that kind of stuff. Learning with just your spare change, having skin in the game to learn and take those baby steps is a great entry point. So you're right. Sometimes just the spare change isn't what's the point. Why not just make a big bet? But entering the market that way, we think is a great way, as well as there are stores all around. I shared this morning. Someone last year had an 89-cent bet. We think that was the remainder of their balance, and they decided to throw a Hail Mary with it. But 89-cent bet, 13 of the 14 parlays hit, leading into Monday Night Football, where if the Redskins, previously the Redskins, now the Washington football team had won, the 89 cents would have turned into $500,000, which talk about spare change changing your life. That's a potential that no other platform could have. And if we make it seamless for the person where they could trace back, I could turn this Chipotle burrito spare change into $500,000, I think that's well worth it.
I think that's well worth it as well. I hope that person cashed out, because I would not have left my money on the football team.
It wasn't public after the fact. The story that was published was before. Thankfully, it was 13 bets on Sunday and then one on Monday that could turn into a story. I would have to guess he did.
Yeah.
Especially if he was like 23, 24, maybe had rent payments or whatever.
You could do a lot more than rent payments with that 14 teams right there. I think that's not too bad.
That's true. Rent payment on an airliner.
Yeah, I was going to say like a yacht or something. That's awesome. Right. And no, man, like, and I asked that question knowing that I also put dollar bets in like every day for these like 12 team or 12, like a couple buddies of mine. They're really big into hockey, so they're just like, let's see if we can guess a person that scores a goal in every single game. And that dollar turns into like 14 grand. So I'm 100% in on those small amounts of money turning. That's not like, you're not going to win money doing that way, right? That's the story. That's the one person that does it. But it's so much fun, man. It is so much fun. I'm going to do it every single day, and I love it. And I'm throwing money down the toilet until one day it turns into that 14 grand, and it's totally worth it. But until then, so as you said, kind of the betting aspect of it, which has 20-something states legal. There's more coming legal pretty much, it seems like every other month. This year, we've already had Virginia and Michigan become legal. Yep. What, as you said, you kind of focus on the fantasy aspect of it. So the DraftKings, the FanDuels, the Yahoos of the world, maybe Monkey Knife Fight. I don't know if you guys, they're good. They're a great company as well. I guess how do you even start these conversations or relationships or partnerships and go to them and just be like, hey, we have this idea. We want to give you money. I feel like they're all very open to the idea of either getting more people to sign up or getting more money onto their platform.
Sure. Yeah. So when we go to B2B partnerships, we think the best way is to sort of prove the concept in the best way ourselves. So we have our own native fantasy sports platform down the road when there are these big companies that already have established state licenses and betting, maybe a larger market share, like you said, DraftKings, FanDuels, Monkey Knife Fights, all of those companies. It'll be a much easier conversation to go to them and say, a lot of what you're doing is great. We think it's great for maybe 85% of your user base. Of the 15% that are younger, maybe don't have much money, they would love this low form, low entry fee functionality, and then to expand your user base as well. I mean, you can look at demographics of like the Penn National, Barstool, sports bets. What they have is awesome, and I'm not knocking that. But just doing sports betting, you're actually going after just 21 plus, and these 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who can't get on the platform in almost all of these legal states now that you mentioned, they really can't get the skin in the game on that platform like that. So we think it's going to be an easy advantage to say spare change for fantasy or just spare change for your other gaming modes. It seems a bit to be after we prove it and really work out the kinks of maybe someone doesn't want to automate it as much. They want to use it as a budgeting tool. It might be seamless to pitch them on that and have them integrate it.
Yeah, I think that aspect of it too. So where did you guys go first? Do you have to go to the credit card companies, the banks? Like how does that aspect of it work? Because there's only 1 million credit cards out there, only 1 million banks that you'd have to deal with. Like how did you develop those relationships and partnerships on the B2B side?
Sure. Yeah, that was actually a tough hurdle to get over. There are a ton of different partners. So we actually use a very secure third-party banking aggregator, Finicity. I'm sure there are 3 or 4 apps that you use them for without knowing. Partnering with them and showing how we're meeting with compliance first was an easy pitch to have them then say, all right, we're going to allow users to connect their bank accounts to your platform securely. Sacrifice that to then connect your spare change. So it wasn't too bad. Looking around the fintech space for B2B partnerships and connections like that with Finicity or Dwala, who does payment verification, or even just KYC aggregators, which is verifying that a person's a real person and of age. It's not too bad once you go through sort of the minutia that is the legal minutia of it. So
yeah, I can see that just taking a lot of time and being just an insane amount of red tape that you have to kind of jump over, cut through, and get all that bullshit over. But
yeah, we had to push launch back a couple of months because of it, but well worth it.
And it's recently launched, correct?
Yeah. So for people listening, it launched about a week ago, almost to the hour. So you can download it. Exactly. Yeah. If you look up Hedge in the App Store, you can find it. At first, when you typed in Hedge, the first thing that came up was Hinge. They smartly said, oh, people are going to misspell Hinge. But after a lot of download, a lot of traffic, a lot of ratings, we are now the first app that you see when you type in Hedge. So give it a look, give it a download, and you can start connecting your spare change.
Congrats, you guys got your name. That's awesome. Good
for you
guys. And so what's that process like? Because again, we're coming at this from so many different angles. You need to worry about the banking aspect and the fintech side. You have to worry about the fantasy gaming aspect. You have to worry about the consumer aspect and actually marketing the product to people. Like how, obviously, as you said, you started this in 2019. We're only 2 years later, depending on, when you started in 2019, what is it, 18 months, 19 months?
Yep.
How did you go about the marketing to consumer side? Because again, it sounds fun, it sounds great, but if you're not really hooked up with the DraftKings and the FanDuels of the world yet, why would someone like myself or somebody listening, why do we need to go out and download this right now?
Sure, that's a great point. Yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle to get users. We really do want to focus less so on the marketing aspect in terms of just pumping dollars into podcast ads, radio ads, all those things, and try to grow it as organically as possible. Particularly, we're going after a lot of college segments. So using a college ambassador program, a little grassroots campaign, ground game is something that we think is the best way to go about it. One, it'll conserve a lot of money. It'll help us learn a lot about how the users are using it or different iterations that they would want. A lot of times people just want to pump money into these applications. And sometimes people think that's what FanDuel and DraftKings actually did. But if you look, they actually started really small, grew, mastered their product. They really started pumping money in when they both had optimized their product and then were fighting for market share. You see, they still hold, 85 or 90% of the functionality. So, and just like if you look at these spare change apps in the fintech industry, like to use their names and sing their praises, Acorns wouldn't consider themselves a Robinhood competitor. They themselves, even though they invest in almost the same securities, the users use them so differently that it's the same mindset for us. A lot of people actually do have FanDuel and DraftKings with unique functionality. We would see that Hedge would not be actually a competitor with them. It would actually supplement the way they play.
Yeah. It sounds like it would be in addition to, if anything. And I think, one really great book, I'm sure you read it, $1 Billion Fantasy. It really goes over the early years of DraftKings and FanDuel and kind of how, Yeah, in the beginning, there were small teams. They were super lean. They were just trying to figure out what the heck they're doing and how they're trying to do it. It's a bunch of people from Europe that were in the betting
Right.
space, and then there's a bunch of dudes up in Boston that they're kind of doing their own thing. So these two companies competing. There's actually a third one as well, which was interesting. And then, yeah, then we all remember, I think it was 2013, I think, where every single commercial, every single billboard, if you didn't see DraftKings or FanDuel, it's because you had your eyes closed. But then that means they heard you, they got you through your ear holes as well. So they were all over the place, as we remember. And one thing that so I love the fantasy sports industry. Work with, as I mistakenly said multiple times, Win Daily Sports. They're doing some incredible stuff in sports betting and fantasy sports, and I love sports betting. Being here in New Jersey, learning more about the industry every day and kind of how it works and why it works and how big it's going to be. I mean, New Jersey's technically the sports betting capital of the United States. Over $6 billion in handle last year, meaning $6 billion of bets placed here in the state of New Jersey. How the legality versus the fantasy side versus the sports betting side. I think, again, your example that you gave us before was sports betting, but if I'm not mistaken, you guys aren't even technically in that space yet. It's just an obvious evolution that will be coming. How much more red tape and legality and bullshit do you have to go through first to get those partners on the fantasy side, and then eventually to be able to utilize those wallets on the sports betting side as well?
Sure, it's a ton. And to say if I knew every single one of them, I'd be lying.
Oh, no.
There are a ton. But I mean, you can look at it in terms of the one example I use is betting against the house versus peer-to-peer betting. If you think about it, fantasy is really just we're setting up a market for people to play with themselves, play against each other, versus a sports book requiring so many reserves to meet sort of betting volume, like you said, handle. That alone with a capital requirement is as good as as big as it's going to get. So these big casinos who have these large balance sheets already have a step ahead of a bunch of people, as well as then the background checks that are then required in the gaming commissions. There are, I think it's 24 states that it's legal to, based on attorney general opinion, to launch fantasy sports, where as long as we meet some cybersecurity regulation, age regulation, and things like that, we can launch. We've already launched in those 24 states, plus DC, as opposed to then 3 or 4 states where it's a free license, where you have to get background checks for everybody that's technically a regulator within the company, a ton of those, as well as a bunch of other things, how the money flows into the application, within the application, back to the users, things like that. The sports betting industry and red tape requires that for every single state. Each state is different, as opposed to the fantasy sports, which actually does a pretty good job of state-to-state regulation. Usually the only changes are age. Massachusetts is 19, for example. Most states are 18. A couple states are 21. But the nuance gets very weird when it's state-to-state, since it is not a federal. It's a federal allowance. When passed a few years ago, it's an allowance for the state to ratify licensure, but it is not a one size fits all legislative body. So it's gonna be a mess, but we're excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, it is so interesting. Again, being here in New Jersey, we're kind of the sandbox state. Right. Everything's tried here, and then it's kind of pushed out around the country. Obviously, we've seen Pennsylvania do incredible in terms of handle. Illinois has been fantastic. I mean, once Texas, Florida, California, New York, once all them get on board, Texas seems to be a little bit further behind the rest of them. Right. Once they get on board, it's going to be very difficult for the federal government not to come down, because it's very frustrating. Certain states are ran through the lottery. Certain states have like 20-cent lines. And it's just, what that means is, like, if you have to put up $120 to win 100, where in most cases you put up 110 to win 100. And so that doesn't sound like that much, but when you're betting thousands of dollars, that becomes a very big tax, unfortunately. So it's really interesting just to kind of see the rollout and everything happening. And over the next 3, 4, 5 years, personally didn't really want the pandemic to happen. But if we can look at it as a positive, so many of these states unfortunately lost so much money due to taxes and everything, that sports betting is going to be an industry that becomes more successful because of it. Because now we're seeing, okay, New Jersey did what in a year where people weren't really allowed outside their houses? Okay, well, what happens when they can go to the casinos again? What happens when they can, more people talk to more people and they're out at bars? I can't wait to be in a bar on an NFL Sunday. That is going to be electric. I'll laugh at every single game. I don't care. It's going to be so much fun. And hopefully I'm going to use Hedge to be able to use that bar tab that I just screwed up, be able to pop it right into my account. So we'll see what happens there. So
break even's a win, right?
Exactly. Hey, man, it's fun. Exactly. I had fun. and I didn't lose any money. It's a
Right.
good day. It's a good day. So tell me a little bit more. You were kind of explaining it before. You said you have your own fantasy platform. That seems like just another, like, how many different layers to this business are there, man? Because I understand why it took you guys so long to be able to finally launch. Like, what
Right.
is the fantasy platform, and how does that run?
Sure. It runs like your typical DFS platform. There's nothing too crazy that we're trying to create creative new there. We think the familiar gameplay on your typical DFS sites is great. Salary cap mode. You can pick up to 8 athletes depending on the game form. But the user can then play with their spare change in these 10-cent contests or how many ever they want, all the way up to $10, maybe up a little bit more as we grow. We do think it's a supplement to their budget. So we don't want to limit them. We figured playing on our platform makes the most sense.
Yeah, and so now there's like 4 different avenues that you have to navigate, right? The fintech side, you have to navigate the banking and that aspect. You have to navigate now this fantasy sports platform that you've built. Then you have to navigate the consumer aspect, and you have to navigate trying to work with these other fantasy sports platforms.
Sure.
At what point is it too much?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it depends. Ask me on a certain day, and I'll give you a better answer.
Good. Yep.
Yeah, but no, it hasn't been too bad so far. We have a great team. We're really focused on our different verticals. We each have our hands in different pots. It's a lot easier when you put most of your focus on product, that a lot of the other stuff gets figured out. If you have a critical mass, we say, like a small amount of users who really understand that, one, the product is where it is. I love it. If they hopefully love it early on, they know the team is going to continue to iterate out to meet their needs, meet their wants. Once you have that, as they say, the rest is history, and hopefully then it grows almost organically. And once you have a great product, the retention goes down, increase goes up, so you have to worry about consumers less. If you sort of dot your I's and cross your T's, legal side is pretty much taken care of. We have great partners on the legal side too. So it is a lot. You're definitely right, and I'm sure it's going to get more and more as we scale, maybe add some different functionalities. But right now, focusing on product is something that helps solve the other verticals.
Naturally, yeah. The better the product. If you have a good app, people use it. I mean, earlier today, a couple of my buddies downloaded an app, a sports betting app. They tried to use it. They said, this is shit. They literally immediately withdrew their money and they deleted the app. So that's not a good way for companies to navigate. Obviously, a lot of different stuff involved, but as long as you have a good product, I think you're right. And so the thing about it is you pick the fantasy sports and eventually it sounds like the sports betting industry, but it seems like this could be used, as you said, just as like a budgetary tool. This could be used for new parents that want to save money for their kid in some way, shape, or form. And if over 18 years, every single payment that you make, it rounds up to the next dollar and you pop it in an account. Like, what are other things that you guys are looking at that you're allowed to tell us, I guess? What are other things that you're looking at to see of ways that this can evolve, become better, and you guys can, hopefully cash out one of these days?
Right. And part of what you said earlier sort of helps me answer this, where a lot of states during the pandemic have to meet budgetary needs and they're rapidly legalizing sports betting to meet those budgetary downfalls. We see the iGaming industry as something that maybe it doesn't hit the headlines that they should be talking about. One, to figure out the safeguards around it for responsible gaming. But two, if they're trying to increase revenue, iGaming revenue matches that of sports betting. In a lot of states, it's bigger. I mean, if you look at casinos around the country, I think slot machines account for 55% of revenue. And so on the others, 45% of that, sports betting, roulette, blackjack, every other poker, every other way they make money combined is still less than slot machines. So when people say sports betting is a way to match the budget, really, I think they're just trying to push sports betting. That's sort of what people more engage with, but the revenue is really coming from iGaming. So the natural iteration is future iGaming mechanisms where, to use the previous one, your Chipotle burrito turns into a slot machine pull or a roulette spin. If you have a lucky number between 1 and 36 and you want to throw minus 25, if my spare change goes to number 25 on a roulette spin every time, that's a great way for somebody to get involved with the iGaming space too, because that has a different responsibility threshold than sports gaming. So really, we see this as, if they want to budget and keep responsible in that way, that's a great way too. Yeah, and the spare change, we say not the spare change war. I think that's the wrong way to see it, because somebody can use multiple spare change apps. Really, the way that these work is we track your spare change and then pull from it after it reaches a certain threshold, as do other applications. The 85 billion, the spare change market, it's an $85 billion market. If you average out how many people have online banking, how many of them then transact a certain amount every day. When you extrapolate that out in the United States, it's about 85 billion, which is right now the sports betting market, 60 billion. So spare change itself isn't going anywhere. natural iterations to what you said, saving for people for later, iGaming methods, lotteries, state lotteries could easily use something like this. The possibilities around this, anything you use to buy, you could use spare change for as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like then you guys picked a good spot. Yeah, iGaming is huge. Not my personal thing, but I know friends that, you know, they have their DraftKings sportsbook, and then they also, you know, hop onto the DraftKings casino, play some blackjack at lunch, win a couple bucks, and that's what they're making their bets with that night. So it's funny how that works.
I get a ton of texts randomly, and they're like, "Hey, I need you to respond quickly. Should I split these 8s against this 10 or whatever it is?" I'm like, I don't know how I became the blackjack expert, but you can just Google that if you want. Maybe they're just trying to say hi. So
yeah, well, it's a nice way to say hi, right? Hey, man, I hear you can make me money. Can you make me money right now?
Right, exactly. Do I double against a hard 6, whatever it is? So
I have no idea what any of that means. It's just, hey, to each his own, as long as you have some fun with it. I mean, obviously, you know, as you said, like all of these companies, it's DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino. It's FanDuel Sportsbook and Casino. It's BetMGM. Where did MGM come from? Well, it's a gigantic casino in Las Vegas, right? So it's all of these different companies that they have casino backgrounds and understand. iGaming's been around much longer than sports betting has.
Oh, yeah.
But this has just brought it. I mean, I totally agree with you. iGaming is bigger than sports betting, but sports betting is putting I guess, shining a brighter light on it, allowing people that like myself, like I would never ever use the DraftKings Sportsbook or the DraftKings Casino part of the Sportsbook and Casino, but I have friends that do. And they didn't know that you could until they downloaded the app that says Sportsbook and Casino on it, right? So it's funny how that works. And hey, however these companies need to operate, people can win money. And then I get the notifications all the time. Hey, here's free $5 to play blackjack. It's like, no, I'm good. I don't even want to. I'm not even trying to go down that route. Give me another free $5 bet. That's what I'll take.
Right, exactly. Wrap that into a future bet or something.
Exactly. That's what I like. And so, what's next, man? What are you guys rocking with next? I mean, you just launched. What are some of the successes? As you said, you get your name in the App Store, which is pretty sweet. So kudos and congratulations. You've had some reviews, you've had some downloads. What has that looked like over the last, I think you said, week, right?
Yeah, correct. It's been about a week. It's been great. I mean, the people that are downloading it, what we're really trying to do is connect with them. Another thing that we see is customer experience and customer support is lacking on a lot of these platforms. Sometimes they're just too big. So we're really trying to engage with our early users, almost text them or talk to them or call them or email them saying, hey, thanks for signing up. Thanks for being part of the Hedge community, because the community is a big part of it as well. And learning from them saying, what do you think we could change? What was your experience like? What could make your experience better? So right now, just trying to maximize the people that we have. I could tell you the number of downloads from a few days ago. I think we had like 300 in the first 24 hours, which was great. Yeah. A lot of family and friends and a lot of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, but there's a starting point everywhere, and learning from them who have been playing on the FanDuels and DraftKings forever, bring their expertise over here, and we'll help make their experience just as good, or if not better than the other ones. So really trying to engage with the early consumers is the first and next step. Those are the future steps. Then attaining a user base, trying to keep steady growth, retention, all that kind of stuff is always fun.
I love it. And as you already alluded to, the college ambassador market, I think is an incredible way of going about it. Definitely, if you haven't, reach out to Alex Scheinman. He did some pretty great stuff over there at Penn State. So it sounds like you guys you're very familiar. He's a really good dude. He was actually on the show, and so was his dad.
No way.
His dad was on the show too. His dad is incredible. They both are incredible family. They're doing some cool stuff. And then I think Jake is that Snapchat or something? He's doing some cool shit. That whole family's nuts, man. I'm very
they're killing it.
They're amazing.
I'm trying to think which one I know decently well, because the one is very much involved with the Penn State business conference.
Yeah, that's Alex.
One of our co-founders, I think, is good family friends with them.
Cool.
I think he's a Philly guy, correct?
That's a good question. I hope not. That would kind of suck. Nah, I kid.
They're great guys. The Penn State crew really. There's a strong bond going out. So.
Hell yeah. Well, congratulations to you guys. And earlier this morning, as of recording, this is the 25th of February, you just won the FSGA, you said, right? FSGA pitch competition. What?
Yeah.
How was that, man? That's got to be a pretty cool accomplishment. Again, a week into the finally launching this thing, and now you're winning pitch competitions.
I know. Yeah. So the FSGA is great. They're the trade association of the fantasy sports industry. They used to be the FSTA. Now they're the FSGA to expand to, like you said, sports betting, sports gaming, all that kind of stuff. They said usually it's a great conference that you can either go to. I think last year was in Las Vegas, or 2 years ago now was in Las Vegas. It was there were some great companies on the competition. We're blessed and honored to have one. It was great. It was a 3-minute pitch, felt like 30 seconds. Jumped on minimal technical difficulties, which is nice when you're jittery for a pitch. I think the video's on there somewhere. You can see me rocking the same sweater that I'm wearing now.
Nice.
Just talking about it. And more broader sense. I tell a nice story about some users, and it was a really cool thing. I'm glad we won. Kudos to the team for everything that we've done so far to sort of share the metrics with our success in winning that pitch competition, and hopefully one of many, right?
I hope it's many, many, many. You guys become extremely rich and famous, and I can say I remember Jackson when. That was cool. We had a great conversation, and now he's running the spare change world, only $85 billion worth. So Jackson, this is awesome, man. Where can we download the app? Where can we follow you? Where can we follow Hedge? Find out more information. Give me all that information if you can.
Sure. Give us a Twitter follow at Hedge_sports. Same with Instagram, Hedge_sports. You can look us up online. We have a landing page, hedge.co. https://hedge.co. You can look us up in the App Store at Hedge, or give me a follow on Twitter. I think it's Fitzgerald25. Add me on LinkedIn for anybody trying to talk about the industry. Those are the main ones I can think of. Or follow me on Instagram, I guess. Whichever. I'm always happy to hear from people.
Appreciate you, man. Yeah, as you said, you're already texting your users. Hopefully we can get you a couple more, some new friends to add to the phone. So I guess one last little piece I want to talk about again. It's just so, the goal, you're in the spare change industry, you created a sports, fantasy sports platform. And I know I kind of asked the question before, when is too much, but how do you, like, as you said, you have to create a good product. Well, which product is number one, right? Like, you need the fantasy sports aspect because you want the opportunities, I'm assuming, down the road with DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah.
But you need the spare change aspect because that's kind of how the business works. So at what point does the fantasy sports aspect kind of fall by the wayside? Like, how is that aspect of it going to work? Because I feel like after so long, it's going to be difficult to maintain two high level aspects of this business. Maybe that's me being, I'm not a pessimistic person. I believe I'm a pretty positive person, but almost like kind of the ideas of both, not that they can't, kind of coexist, and it seems like they will, and it's going to be awesome. It just seems like it's, as I said, too much. Like, at what point do you kind of say, like, all right, we use this fantasy aspect of it just to get people involved. Now we don't need to do this anymore. Now DraftKings or FanDuel can come take over. Like, how do you look at that side of it?
Yeah, and it's tough. It's one of those things where it's so circumstantial. I honestly can't give you a good answer.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, I really hope that people use the spare change functionality, as I said, to supplement what they're already doing. Maybe when enough early users almost see it as the easiest entry point across the industry. I mean, we would love for Hedge to be the first spare change one in the market, but if people are using their spare change for something else, something better, worthwhile, all the better. We can't take people away from that. But yeah, we'll figure it out. We have a great team who's very flexible, as you said. Hopefully we'll figure it out on the fly. Hopefully to keep the gaming, we want to keep the gaming experience top level, and maintain the minimum standard that is the spare change functionality. If we have to automate that down the road, we will. But keeping the gaming functionality, I think, tip top is the best thing we can focus on. So to your point a little bit about which one to focus on more, which one's more important, probably the gaming side. But
yeah, because I guess that's true. Like with the spare change side, is if you're partnering with all these fintech companies that can kind of maintain that aspect of it, then it's really just making sure that the fantasy side works and is good, and as you said, is top level. So good stuff, man. This is awesome. Make sure I'll have all your socials and the website in the show notes. Also, if you can send me over, I guess, like a iTunes. What they died. Like a Play Store. Are you even on Google actually?
No, we're not. So our web application will be ready for, probably by this weekend. So anybody that has Android can do it on Safari or Chrome on their phone, but it is iOS specific. So.
Okay, cool. So send me over a link where people can click that and download that. I think that would be pretty cool. But Jackson, this was great, man. Appreciate you coming on the show today, bud.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Nice talking to you.
Congratulations too on your pitch competition. Great job, dude.
Thanks. Yeah, it was fun.
Good stuff.